Today, history and archaeological experts are able to reconstruct the accomplishments of ancient Egyptians with reasonable accuracy, thanks to the amazing legacy of monumental inscriptions, stone architecture, and the engraved art that they left behind. Would you be surprised if I tell you that ancient Egyptians believed that your brain is in your heart? Well, I'm going to explain that and many other strange facts about everyday life in ancient Egypt. Without any further delay, let's begin. Number 1. Egyptians were mostly vegetarians. According to a study that was published in the Journal of Archaeological Science, the majority of the Egyptians' diet consisted of plant-based foods. Despite the fact that they lived near the Nile River, ancient Egyptians did not consume a great deal of fish. Additionally, they would mostly feed on fruits and vegetables, such as dates, celery, pomegranates, and garlic. But that does not mean they never liked meat or that they didn't know how to catch fish. Having meat was more of a commodity for the rich, while the less fortunate were more inclined to consume meat during celebrations. Before we proceed, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Number 2. To ancient Egyptians, circumcision was like a ticket to adulthood. In ancient Egypt, circumcision was not performed at the time of birth. Rather, it was performed as a ceremony of granting a right of way into adulthood. The evidence of such a ceremony is depicted in paintings found in temples that date back to 4000 BC, in which Egyptian priests can be seen performing these rituals with sharp tools. To some historians, the circumcision of captured soldiers was carried out to humiliate prisoners of war, before selling them into slavery. As for the elite class or pharaohs, a vast majority of them had their circumcisions performed, with a few notable exceptions. Number 3. Ancient Egyptians believed in the equality of men and women. In ancient Egypt, women were given the right to buy and sell property, which included both land and slaves. They were also able to file a petition for a divorce, and had the right to initiate legal action against another party. More amazingly, some evidence also suggests that female babies were treated with the same enthusiasm as male babies. As a matter of fact, when the Greeks captured Egypt in 332 BC, they discovered that Egyptian women had significantly more freedom than Greek women did at the time. It also implies that in terms of law and order, they were more modern than the Greeks. Number 4. Ancient Egyptians wore makeup. Yes, both men and women. Ancient Egyptian males liked applying a little makeup, notably eyeliner made of lead. It was usually made by grinding ores into a powder to generate a compound known as kohl. But according to modern research, these cosmetics also had a high concentration of nitric oxide. Although lead is considered hazardous to the human body, nitric oxide helps boost the immune system against infections. Owing to the high concentration of nitric oxide in eye makeup, ancient Egyptians, whether they knew it or not, were able to help prevent eye infections. Number 5. Ancient Egyptians loved beer. Evidence suggests that beer was made in Egypt 18,000 years ago in the Paleolithic period. Bread and beer were literally the primary sources of nutrition for both children and adults. And since money didn't exist at that time, labor or the working class was paid by bread and beer as their salary. More amazingly, the beer that the ancient Egyptians consumed was more of a meal than a source of getting drunk. It was thick and soupy, didn't have much of an intoxicating effect, and most likely had a sweet flavor. They also considered numerous gods and goddesses dedicated to beer, and they believed that Ra, the god of sun, was the one who invented beer. Wine also existed, but it was expensive and reserved for the elite class only. Number 6. Ancient Egyptians loved board games. Playing board games was a popular mode of relaxation in everyday life in ancient Egypt. There were many games played, including Mayan and Dogs and Jackals, but the game of chance known as Senet was the one that was enjoyed by the most people. This game dates back as far as 3500 BC and was played on a large board that was painted with 30 squares. Each player had a collection of pieces that could be moved around the board in response to the sticks thrown or rolls of dice. Although historians continue to argue over the specifics of Senet's rules, there is no denying the popularity of the game. There are paintings of Queen Nefertari playing the game Senet. Tutankhamun, a pharaoh, is even considered to be buried with game boards alongside him in his tomb. Number 7. Ancient Egyptians thought that they think with the heart. Well, you may find it one of the most strange facts about everyday life in ancient Egypt. Even while the ancient Egyptians understood many aspects of anatomy, they couldn't really figure out the way the brain works. They believed that the heart, also known as the ib, was located at a place within the body, where cognition begins. Additionally, they believed that it was the epicenter of love, bravery, and sadness, all of which are concepts that stayed popular even until modern times. So, what did ancient Egyptians believe about the functioning of the brain? The brain was removed during the mummification process because perhaps they thought it was useless. Number 8. Ancient Egyptians believed in education. Yes, but for those who were rich. In ancient Egypt, only the male children of upper-class residents, such as scribes and officials, were allowed to receive an education. These young men were educated in a variety of subjects including geography, mathematics, and hieroglyphic reading and writing. More amazingly, as they advanced through their education, they were also entitled to specialization in various fields such as health, science, and history. Among the poor, education was not considered much of a priority. A father would give his son the knowledge of his profession to support his family. But that doesn't mean that there was no hope for the poor. Evidence suggests that scholarship programs also existed at that time to support and enroll talented pupils in the prince's school, where the sons of the pharaohs and other members of the nobility were sent. Number 9. Egyptian pharaohs were often obese. Pharaohs are typically shown in Egyptian art as being slim and statuesque. Nevertheless, it is highly unlikely how they actually looked. Studies suggest that the traditional Egyptian diet that consisted of beer, wine, bread, and honey contained a lot of sugar, and that makes up a considerable amount of calories to be efficiently utilized and burnt by the tummies of royal families or nobles. The examination of mummies has revealed that a significant number of Egyptian pharaohs were sickly, suffered from obesity, and some even had diabetes. The fabled Queen Hatshepsut, who reigned in Egypt in the 15th century BC, is a good example of this. All of her sarcophagus portrays her as lean and athletic, but many historians believe that she was actually obese and balding. Number 10. Ancient Egyptians used garlic to test for pregnancy. Yes, that's right, but not by eating garlic. In fact, by putting the garlic into the vagina. Actually, they believed that a woman's womb was connected to the alimentary canal, the pathway that food takes from the mouth to the rectum. Therefore, a woman's fertility was determined by inserting a clove of garlic into her vagina. If the woman's breath had a strong aroma of garlic, this would indicate that she was pregnant. If not, this would indicate that she had a blockage in the canal and was unable to become pregnant. More amazingly, they also believed that the bones, rather than the testicles, were the source of sperm. Weird, isn't it? Number 11. Ancient Egyptians used temples as banks. In ancient Egypt, temples served not just as places of worship, but also as repositories to the country's wealth. Before the introduction of money or coins, payment of wages and trading were done via a barter system. A network of granaries may be seen within the temples, because grain was the primary source of revenue for the empire. After that, administrators would redistribute the grain as a wage ration to workers and professionals located all across the region. If you worked in the ancient Egyptian empire at the lowest paying job, you might have been paid the equivalent of 10 loaves of bread and 2 full jugs of beer as your usual wage. Number 12. Hungry hippos. The Nile River was essential to the survival of ancient Egyptian civilization in almost every way. They irrigated their crops with it, made their garments out of it, and even utilized it to travel from one location to another. But these travels were not always risk-free. When traveling along the Nile, passengers were warned to be on the lookout for hippos, crocodiles, and other dangerous animals. It is said that a hippopotamus attacked and murdered at least one of the pharaohs, whose name was Menes. In another instance, King Tut was reportedly injured by a hippopotamus, which in turn led to his untimely death. Thank you for watching and subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.